peace and goodwill. They seem to be in short supply. Our nation seems irreparably divided. Families torn apart by politics. People's mental health is fragile at best. And while Christians call on God to support their side, for others, and perhaps the majority, faith has become difficult, if not impossible. I'm talking, of course, about the year 1863, when our country was locked in the middle of a civil war, uncertain which side would prevail. Imagine if we could hear from someone who lived at that time. What might we learn? Could our past hold the secret to our future? What if we could hear from someone like the author of the poem written that year, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, and understand why he wrote it and what he might say to us now?
My son was in the back room. He was injured fighting with the Massachusetts 1st Cavalry, New Hope Church, Virginia. Doctors say he'll survive. But his bandages have to be changed every 2 hours. Felt like I haven't slept for 2 months. Truth is, I haven't slept for 2 years since my wife died. You know, there's certainly truth in being tired in your body, but sometimes your soul gets tired. You ever been tired in your soul? I know that's not the most uplifting way to begin a story about how I came to faith on Christmas Day, but it's where the story begins. So you're stuck now, you might as well listen. Where the story begins. My wife was writing Christmas letters. Her sleeve had brushed too close to the candle. Her dress caught fire. By the time I reached her, she was engulfed in flames. I threw my body on her to put the flames out, but I couldn't save her. She died the next day. I got scars on my face from the flames. I grew a beard, hide the scars. I finally shaved it because, well, some scars you can't hide. My scars ran deeper. My first wife died. We were traveling and she had complications due to a miscarriage. I was a lot younger then. Didn't know how to handle it. I threw myself into my work, kept writing. But my writing, my art reflected my reality. A poem I wrote right after she died. I think I have it here. Let's see. Oh, yes. Yes, this one I titled The Rainy Day. The day is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. The vine still clings to the moldering wall. But at every gust, the dead leaves fall and the day is dark and dreary. My life is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. My thoughts still cling to the moldering past, but the hopes of youth fall thick in the blast and the days are dark and dreary. Be still, sad heart, and cease repining. Behind the clouds is the sun still shining. Thy fate is the common fate of all. Into each life some rain must fall. Some days must be dark and dreary. You see my struggle? Desperately wanting to believe something I did not have. It was about that time that Harvard offered me a position, full professorship. The first assignment was abroad. I gladly welcomed it, maybe a chance just to get away from my sorrows. I threw myself into work. I learned languages, French, Spanish, Portuguese, German, Italian, Dutch. A jumping Jehoshaphat, I thought that might modestly impress more than a few of you. When I went to Switzerland, I met a young woman named Frances Appleton. She was traveling with her family, trying to get away from griefs of their own. Her brother had just died. We spent time together, and I fell in love with her. And I knew she was to become my wife. The only problem is, she didn't know that. So I decided to give her some time. After 1 year, she broke off the relationship. So I decided to give her some more time. My strategy paid off. 4 years later, she agreed to become my wife. And it was beatific. It was hypnotic. Our 18 years together were like one long lyrical poem. And then she died. And then this godforsaken war broke out. I've never seen our country so divided. I don't know that we can withstand it. Parents send the same two sons off to fight. One on one side, one on the other, brothers shooting brother. Neighbors who can't be neighborly any longer. And why? Because of slavery. The propagation of which believes one human being should have the right to own another human being. And of all people, that theory promulgated by Christians. There's a preacher in New York who loves taking so-called Christians to task. His name is Henry Ward Beecher. His father, Lyman, was president of Yale. The son, even smarter than the father. But the son is distinguished by his preaching. One of the most amazing communicators I've ever heard. Most people don't realize where he learned to preach that way. He came under the influence of uneducated Methodist circuit riders in some cow town called Indianapolis. True. So, one time I went to hear him at his Plymouth church in New York. He got about halfway through his sermon, and then he got worked up. He said, "Some think it offensive when the preacher looks out and calls people sinners, but it's not. They grow rather accustomed to the title, because as long as they accept that they are sinners, they often forget that they're not supposed to stay that way. They're supposed to get better. But sin has its benefits, and the beneficiaries tend not to want to change." And so he says, when Christians welcome the fact that they are sinners, they feel they've done their religious duty, whether they change or not. He says, so the preacher can get up in the pulpit and shout, "Ye sinners," and the congregation says, "Amen." But when he says, "And slavery is a sin," they say, "Throw him out." You could hear a pin drop. And then he said, "I fear that the scars of our national sin are going to plague our nation for some time ahead." Never met Henry, but I met his sister Harriet one time. Harriet Beecher Stowe. She wrote this book you may have heard of, Uncle Tom's Cabin. It drew the wrath of the nation. It was such a graphic portrayal of slavery that the North rose up in righteous indignation, pointing its finger at the South, saying, "Our country must be rid of the evil," only making the South more entrenched and preserving its institution. They say that book drove us to war. I was among the finger pointers. It's kind of nice to be right and to know who's wrong. But then one day you're carrying your son into your house and he has bullet holes, and you wonder if being right is enough. And if it's not, what is? So I quit writing. I had nothing more to say. Critics gave me up for dead. They called me morbid, moribund, morose, and any other number of M words I could think of. I read one review that said, "Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was once the poet of the common man and the voice of his aspirational hopes." Felt like I was reading my own obituary. I'd become a ghost to myself, unable to distinguish the apparitions of my memory from the reality of some new becoming. Oh, now wait a minute. I've got to write that down. That has a certain ring to it there. Maybe I haven't lost it after all. But what I had lost was my faith. And maybe that's the worst loss of all, because when you lose your faith, you lose the internal resistance to the external forces. Where does faith come from? That's a thought worth pondering. Where does your faith come from? I never got my faith from philosophies or creeds. My faith came from my living, and my living taught me that a dependable faith comes from not having it. I don't mean unfaith. I mean having faith as a possession. Because when you have to possess faith, it's up to you to keep it. It's up to you to maintain it. It's up to you to find it when you lose it. And anything that can be possessed can be lost. You can lose your eyeglasses. You can lose your top hat. You can lose your health. You can lose loved ones. And I had. And I guess one day I looked at my faith the same way, and I woke up and I couldn't find it anymore. It was just gone. And like losing something in your house and you start retracing your steps to find where you left it, I began to retrace my life, wondering, where had I left my faith? You know, I think I first started to lose my faith when I went with my friend Ralph Waldo Emerson to his Transcendental Club meetings. I didn't want to admit it, but I didn't even know what transcendental meant. I soon found out. It meant a bunch of erudite, snobbish intellectuals sitting around poking holes in everything sacred. They would critique, criticize, and run down religion, ritual, doctrine, dogma, scripture itself. And at first, I found it rather smug to be in their company. It's kind of nice to know better than other people, to look down at their simple ideas and philosophies. But what I came to find out is it doesn't take any great intellect to go around knocking the props out of whatever you believe in. It takes a lot more courage to say what it is you believe in. What it is you believe makes the world better, makes your life better, gives you something to fall back on. I wanted to know what I believed. About the time I went to Europe, one of their great theologians died, a man named Friedrich Schleiermacher. Now, right there's a name you don't say after taking a bite of food. Schleiermacher pushed back on the Enlightenment. He said it's not enough to create our own God by our intellectual thinking. Faith must be more than an intellectual assent. There must be evidence of the heart that you feel that which you believe in. His detractors called him a sentimentalist, but he wouldn't give up the argument. He said it's the evidence of the heart that allows you to be willing to depend on a God through Jesus Christ. And I realized this is what I've been missing. This is what I needed. I read his treatise, Christmas Eve, a dialogue. It was about an average German home on Christmas Eve, family, friends together, sharing the revelry and the gift opening. And then when things settle down, they gather around the hearth and begin to talk about what they believe about Christmas. The women go first. They talk about the glory of the music, how music speaks to them of the mysteries of faith in ways sermons can't reach. And then the men speak, and the mood changes. Why is it when men speak, the mood typically changes? They start talking about the intellectuals they had been reading, the scholars who gave arguments and reason against the historical Jesus, how there could not be such a thing as the supernatural and miracles, and Christmas itself was nothing more than a polite fairy tale. And finally, at the end of the treatise, one man speaks up, not joining the others in their critical discussion. He says, I cannot speak with you because Christmas makes me want to believe. It makes me want to believe that there is a God who does not give up on us, and he keeps coming, and that love wins the day. That's the inspiration I wanted. That's the inspiration I knew would bring me to faith, but where to find it? I came home, determined to find that inspiration, but then one day your wife dies and a war breaks out, and you're caring for your son who's been injured and fighting, and I gave up the search. Until one day, it was about daybreak. I'd been tending to my son. I brought in his bandages, and I heard the bells ringing. And I couldn't figure out why the bells are ringing. What day is it? It's Friday. Why are the bells ringing on Friday? What in the world is going on? And then it dawned on me, it's Christmas Day. I'd forgotten. It's Christmas Day. And for the first time in a long time, I felt inspiration. A lyric came to my mind, and I took out my pen. I heard the bells on Christmas Day. They're old, familiar. Carols play, and wild and sweet, the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I had no sooner finished writing the words when they were drowned out. I was inspired to keep writing, but from a very different inspiration. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. The ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men, and from each black, accursed mouth the cannons thundered from the south, and with the sound the carols drowned. Peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair, I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said. Hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. realize the bells are still ringing. Why are the bells still ringing? Has someone forgotten what he's doing? Why are the bells still ringing? And then I realized the bells outlasted the bombs. The bells are ringing because they can't be stopped. The message they proclaim can't be stopped. It was like the bells became God's voice to me, saying, Henry, do you hear me? I'm here. I haven't gone anywhere. I have been here all along. And I just started to weep. Because I realized that faith wasn't something I had. It had me. And the God I wondered if I could believe in said, I never stopped believing in you. I don't know that you get to that kind of faith from any other path. But now I know. And I wrote one last verse. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men.